the cloud. I think that works best.
Sure.
All right, then. Yeah, sounds good. Okay. Yeah, I mean, just to reiterate what Michael mentioned, make sure to sign in to the workshop as an attendee on Star Search. And also, if you have a question, feel free to chat it in the Zoom group chat, and I will read it out loud. This entire session is recorded. If you're not speaking, try to mute yourself. Well, ideally you mute yourself throughout the entire session, and you just put questions into the Zoom group chat. And if you're curious about past workshops I've done, past videos I've done, there's a YouTube link for it. I'll have a link at the end of this workshop, so you can take a look at that. And I'll be sending out the slides later, along with everything. Is there anything else you want to add, Mike?
Not at this point. I mean, welcome. And again, I just want to thank you for your insight, your time, for being such a strong, positive force for our students and presenting on these very important topics for over a year now, I believe it's been. It's been a while.
Yes, it's been a while.
Right? So we appreciate all of your time and efforts in helping our students and answering all of their questions. I'm going to throw my email address into the chat box in case any students want to email me directly with very specific questions, or if they want to get access to any of your previous videos, I'll put my email address in the chat box so students can reach out to me directly. But other than that, the torch has been passed over to you, so feel free to take it away.
All right, thank you. Sounds great. Yeah, just like Mike was saying before, I've been doing these financial literacy workshops. Usually they're monthly, sometimes they occur more than once a month, depending on how much time I have on my hand. But full-time, I'm a software engineer, and part-time, I run a blog on the side to moonfund.com, where I basically talk about financial literacy and about retirement, right? Two big topics that I'm very passionate about, and also something that I didn't know much about until recently when I started learning about them. So this workshop is about investing for retirement. Obviously, there's a lot to break out here and a lot of information to dig through. And just to get started, my name is Alan. I'm a CUNY Baruch graduate from a low-income immigrant background. There's a lot there to basically unpack, but the gist of it is that I came from a family that didn't have a lot of money, so we didn't talk about money, right? It's something very difficult to bring up. And money always seems like a taboo topic, especially in America, and more so if there isn't much of it going around. But coming from CUNY Baruch, I can sort of understand the lack of financial literacy built into the program and built into the support surrounding this. It's something that you have to learn by yourself on your own, unless, of course, you had someone to teach you, which in most cases is not true. And my goal is to make sure that everyone can achieve retirement, right? It shouldn't matter what your background is. It shouldn't matter where you came from. The only thing that matters is that you're smart about it, you're willing to learn, and you're willing to put in the effort and time to teach yourself and make the right moves to get yourself to a comfortable retirement. Quick disclaimer before I really dig into it. This presentation is an opinion, right? It's for informational purposes only. It's not intended to be financial advice. I'm not your financial advisor, right? If you really need someone to go over your current finances, be sure to reach out to a licensed professional. They will know best. Everyone's financial situation is different. But what I can do is give you research, and then you can make your own financial decision from that research and really go forward from there. So throughout this workshop, obviously, there's going to be some confusing terms here and there, and some confusing topics here and there. If you do get lost, always feel free to chat in the group, Zoom group chat. I'm always monitoring it. If you have a question, I'll read it out loud. So it will be in the recording, and I will answer it as I go along. So don't hesitate. If you get lost, it's something that's very difficult to catch on to, so be sure to ask your question right or as early as possible. All right, so let's start off with some numbers, right? I really love numbers just because they really paint the picture that we really need to see. So basically in this chart, let's say we invest $375 every month. for 42 years, starting from the age of 25 to 67. I chose 67 just because that's considered the full retirement age, or the age that most people are likely to retire. And if you do invest consistently over that period of time, you will end up with somewhere around $1.6 million. Right? You can see on the left-hand side, the chart, the green section is your investments, right, and how much they've grown over time. And the blue part is how much money you put in, right? So this is the $375 every month. And you can see here that you haven't even really put in that much money by comparison, and your money has grown so much more. We're obviously assuming a 7% return on average every year is something that most financial experts are comfortable with assuming, just based on historical and financial data. You can't see the chart. Okay, but do you see the numbers on the right-hand side? No, you don't. Interesting. Can people see the screen now? So you see me, so you can see the screen, okay. Well, let me see if I full screen this. Can everyone see the screen still right now? Yeah, so you can't see the screen. Okay, great. Sounds good. All right, let me see if I can move back and forth. Can you see the slides change? Does everyone see the cute dog? Okay, great. Everyone can see the dog. We're moving along. Great. All right. Gist of this slide is basically how can we get everyone to 1.6 million and a comfortable retirement, investing $375 each month. All right, so 1.6 million by 67, right? Can anyone guess in the group chat what the yearly salary for that might be? Any guesses at all? I'm taking all kinds of numbers here. 80K, 42K, 60K. Wow, okay, I'm seeing a lot of answers really fast, but a few people guessed it right, and a few people are very close. But the number that we're looking at here is $50,000. It's a very realistic number, and this number is very important to all of us because this is the number that an average is the average a salary that a graduate right out of college would have. Right, so that's why this number is very important because even if you graduate and you are average, right, you can still retire a millionaire, which is very important. Not that 1.6 million really means anything to most people. It's just a matter of it's a good benchmark and it's a realistic benchmark for many people to reach. At the end of the day, what matters is that how you spend your money and how much you need to save to achieve your version of a comfortable retirement. So the first step to retire and to investing really is budgeting. Right? You can only invest money if you have money. If you don't have money, you can't invest anything. It's kind of like you need to be aware of how your money is being spent and how you earn your money. Budgeting can be super simple if you have done it. Right? It's really comes down to monthly expenses, how much money you spend each month, and your monthly income, how much money you make each month. If you happen to be, full-time salaried employee, your income can be very consistent. If you're an independent contractor, maybe not so much. Maybe it's more random and inconsistent, so which makes it more difficult. Just be sure that at the end of every month, you keep track of all your expenses, all the money that you make, and you subtract your expenses from your income. And for those of you who haven't started working yet, there's this tool here. It's an online tool to tell you estimate your income after taxes, which I found really useful when I was starting out. I could basically plan my budget before I started my full-time job, which is very important, right? You want to make sure that you know where your money's going before you start getting a lot of money. What happens is that a lot of people spend all the money that they get, right? Deservingly so, right? You get your first big paycheck, you want to spend it, right? You want to buy a car, you want to buy all this new stuff, new phone and whatnot, and it's nice, but you have to be cognizant of the fact that you can't do it consistently, and you need to budget and really save your money. So here are some of my favorite tools for budgeting. One of the few that everyone has access to, and NOAA, especially if you come from Baruch Business School, is going to be Excel. People love Excel, right? It's so easy. Just keep track and record of everything, and do simple math to subtract and add all those expenses and incomes at the end of the day. And then there's Google Sheets, which is something that I like to use just because I have access to it everywhere. And there's really nifty things you can do to hook it up to different forms and whatnot. But if you feel a little bit on the lazier side, you want to automate some stuff, you want to let technology really handle that for you, there's Mint. Mint is basically a free tool to help you keep track of your expenses and your income. Basically, you would connect your financial accounts. So this includes your bank account, your credit card, and they would help you categorize your expenses and add them up at the end of the month. So you don't have to do any math yourself or really do any sort of logging and recording of the expenses yourself. You need a budget. YNAB is the paid version of Mint. The trade-off of using a free service is obviously there's going to be ads that your ad blocker can't block. I've tried. If you are on Mint, you're going to get ads. You can try to block them. They're not going to happen. So Mint does have ads. If you don't like ads, you can pay for You Need a Budget. Very similar service. So let's look at an average budget for someone that's living in New York City. You have to remember that a lot of people, the proof that a lot of people are living in New York City on a really low income exists. If you come from a low income family, your families live in New York City and they can manage to do it. So here is an example budget of someone living in Brooklyn with 2 roommates. What it really comes down to is the rent, right? The rent eats everything. It's 50% of your expenses here. Not your income, of your expenses. So this is rough, but is what reality is reflective of. $1,200. MTA, obviously, right now you're not traveling anywhere, so maybe you can take out MTA from this. Eating out, internet, electricity, phone, grocery, everyone's expenses will be different. This is just data that I gathered from other people and also from averages in New York City. Right? Obviously, that's not Manhattan. Right? This is the outer boroughs, which is fine. Right? You're not going to be living in Manhattan anyway if you're making $50,000 each year. You'll notice that there's a large miscellaneous portion here, which is $500. This exists because everyone's budget is going to be different, so everyone needs wiggle room. So you should all have wiggle room in terms of like how much flexibility you have, right? Do you want a 1-bedroom? Do you want a studio, right? How much more would that cost? And there should be flexibility for you to, have that lifestyle that you want and also save for retirement at the same time. We just have to draw the balance somewhere. All right, so here's some quick math to really go over it. If you're making $50,000 and you are working in New York City, your post-tax income will come out to be roughly $3,094. Right? And all the expenses that we talked about before totals to $2,445. Do the math, income minus expenses at the end of the month, you're going to have $649. Right? This number is very important because it's much higher than the $375 that we talked about investing each month. Right? So there is a lot of wiggle room here. And with that wiggle room, you can live the lifestyle that you want. Obviously, it can't be lavish, but we're assuming a lot of things here. We're assuming that you're going to make $50,000 until you retire at 67. Chances are, we're smart. We're going to get promotions. We're going to get raises, and we'll be fine in the long term. So we're being very conservative here, actually, if you look at it. All right. Are there any questions so far? Let's give it some time. If not, I'm gonna move on. This is one of the budgeting is one of the more difficult things, but also something that everyone needs to do. But once you get it, it sort of clicks, right? You can sort of understand how to budget. It becomes a habit, which is where you want to get to. All right, once you have a budget, the most important thing is to have an emergency fund, right? An emergency fund is very important, especially if you put into the context of what's happening right now with the coronavirus. A lot of people lost their jobs. Right? A lot of people lost their jobs, and a lot of people do not have money saved up to sort of outlast this coronavirus until they can get a job again, or until they can secure income again, which makes it very difficult, right? You need money to feed yourself, you need money to live, and you need money to pay for rent. So usually an emergency fund is a fund that is set aside for exactly what it sounds like, an emergency, right? This can be if you're unemployed, if you didn't expect to be unemployed, if you have a medical emergency. It could be many things, whatever would require you to pay out hundreds to thousands of dollars at the moment's notice. And ideally, you have the money handy just because you don't want to borrow money, which will lead to debt, and you don't want to pull money out of your investment accounts. Usually, an emergency fund is recommended to be 3 to 6 months of living expenses, just a good benchmark. So in the previous case, our living expenses was around $2,500. So ideally, you would have at a minimum $7,500 in a bank account somewhere, secured and ready to be used at a moment's notice. I prefer to use an online high yield savings account. What's the difference between an emergency fund and savings? That's a great question. I think it really comes down to context, right? So an emergency fund is something you only use for emergencies. A savings account is something you can think of, hey, I'm saving for a house. I'm saving for a car. I'm saving for a laptop. You don't want to use your emergency fund to buy a nice laptop that you don't need, right? It's something very important. Emergency fund is something that you need when an emergency occurs, and it's about how you differentiate between them. A bank is not going to tell you, hey, here's an account for emergencies and here's an account for savings. It's something that you have to draw the distinction by yourself. It's very important to have that distinction because people too often end up using their emergency fund for things that aren't really an emergency. Should I save both together or in a separate account? That's a good question. I think it depends on your preference, personal preference. Personally, I have separate accounts for them whenever I can. And it doesn't cost that much money to have a separate account depending on your approach to it. Right? For example, if you start an account with Chase, right? They'll have a minimum like many other banks do. And you have to keep a certain amount in that account. So that's the only expensive part about starting a new account. But some accounts have zero minimum, so you can use those as well. How much money do you recommend putting into this emergency account? So it varies from person to person. What I would say is figure out how much money you're spending each month and then multiply it by 3. Or if you want to be conservative, multiply it by 6. How safe or secure are online savings accounts, and why do you have a higher yields versus regular banks? It's a great question. I'm gonna jump right into that question in the next slide. But I recommend using an online high yield savings account for an emergency fund, just because based on what it sounds like. Just gonna ask another question here before I move on to the next slide. Where should you store the $375 per month? Do you keep it as cash or? That's a good question. We're also gonna jump to that. So the whole ideology behind the $375 is that's the money that you invest. So you don't keep it in your emergency fund, right? Some money that you actually invest into the stock market. Someone asked, do you recommend Marcus by Goldman Sachs? Everyone's so excited to answer my next slides that I'm gonna post up in a little bit. How do you decide which online high yield to choose with very low interest rates right now? Great question. Let me get to the next slide and I will answer the 3 questions about high yield savings accounts in a little bit. So an emergency fund is something that you should not invest. It's very important that you do not invest this money because one of the most common scenarios for an emergency fund is when a recession occurs. And usually a recession means you lose your job, right? So if the recession occurs, the stock market will drop. And if the stock market drops, the money that you invested is also gonna drop. So you don't wanna start out with $7,000 in your emergency fund that's invested in the stock market. And then the recession occurs, you lose your job, stock market gets cut in half, and now you only have $3,500. Very important that you keep your emergency fund in cash. All right, this is separate from the money that you invest. This is just an account that you keep on the side to protect yourself in case you lose your job or an emergency does occur. Right, so it's very important that it's in cash and accessible. All right, high yield savings account. A bunch of people ask questions about it. Here are all the answers that you've all dreamed of having when it comes to savings accounts. Right, so a normal savings account has an interest rate of 0.01% to 0.06%. And interest rates are basically, you know how when you have a savings account, you see in your statement at the end of every month, you get like a cent. Right, if you have a normal savings account, that's basically the bank paying you money for keeping cash with them. Right, so online high yield savings account does the same exact thing, but at a higher interest rate. So right now, the interest rate is 1.3%. I remember last year when I was doing the same presentation, it was 2%. Obviously, interest rate has dropped a lot based on what the Federal Reserve has done and what the government has decided to do to counteract this coming recession that's occurred because of the coronavirus. And you know, the high yield savings accounts that I recommend are Discover, which is what I personally use, and then there's Marcus by Goldman Sachs. They're pretty much the same. I don't think there's any difference between the two. Some of them do offer higher rates than others do. I heard Ally is another good one. So to answer the question, yes, I do recommend Marcus by Goldman Sachs. A lot of my friends use it. It seems safe, it seems fine to me, and they pay one of the highest interest rates in the market right now. In what other cases would you go for a high yield savings account instead of normal? I would say you never want to use a normal savings account. There's absolutely, in my opinion, no reason to use a normal savings account. Right? Why would you want to get less money when you can have a higher yield savings account? The only negative for a high yield savings account is that it is online. So to withdraw the money, you need to transfer it to a local branch, right? And I have my high yield savings account hooked up to my Chase checking account, which allows me to just transfer money. Is interest rate the only difference between normal and high yields? It's one of the biggest differences. The other ones is just like the time it takes to move your money around, and the difference is going to be like 2 days or 1 day, right? So if you ever come to a situation where you need your money right away and it needs to be done in like a day or two, I think it's very rare, because even if you lose your job, even if you have debt or you need to pay rent, people usually allow you to transfer your money, move your money around. There's usually not like a super hard deadline unless you wait until the very last minute. So as long as you plan your finances, you should have sufficient time to move money around, which I think is the biggest difference between the two. Other than that, I really don't see a reason to have a normal savings account. Are there fees associated with high yield savings accounts? Uh, no. Is one of the negatives of a normal savings account is that usually a normal savings account will have a fee, right? Because then they'll say something along the lines of Chase, for example. If you have less than $300, we're going to charge you money to keep money in the account. And I personally, I think that's ridiculous, because why would you charge people money when they don't have money, right? It doesn't make sense. Many high yield savings accounts have a deposit of $0 as a minimum, so there are no fees associated with it. And that's very important to mention. The reason they're able to offer high interest rates is because they're all online, usually most of the time. So they don't have to pay for people in the bank. They don't have to pay for a physical location. So really, the one thing you can do, even if you are not working right now, is open a high yield savings account. There's no reason not to open one. It's a quick Google search away, and it'll take like 15 minutes at most, and you can do it all online. Make sure you do it at home and not in a public computer, because you do have to provide sensitive financial information. Just gonna give it like a minute and move on to the next thing. Yeah, very important to have a high yield savings account, something that we can all do today. All right, we're going to talk about actual retirement now. Right, everything we've spoken about was to sort of prepare you for retirement, just like basic financial literacy, budgeting, having emergency funds. The next thing is actually about retirement. And the first topic we want to talk about is the 401k and where you keep your money for retirement, basically. So we're talking about two accounts. The first one we're going to talk about is the 401k, which I'm sure a lot of you've heard about, mentioned either by people currently working, people who are maybe your older siblings, but usually it's a term that's mentioned in passing and not really focused on, because again, money is taboo. People don't want to talk about it, but here I am, ready to talk all about it. So there are two types of 401ks. There's the traditional and the Roth. Don't get confused by the terms. There's key differences between the two. But really, what it really boils down to is that it depends on when you want to be taxed. Right? One of the most important things when you start working full time, or you start working part time, or really working, is taxes. If you never worked before, you're going to be in this for a surprise when those taxes hit you. Well, basically, traditional and Roth, the difference is when you are taxed. Right? So traditional 401k, you will get taxed later. A Roth 401k, you'll get taxed now. Right? Just keep in mind, those are the differences. A 401k, you can, at max each year, you can put in $19,500. That's a lot of money. You do not need to put in that amount of money. Right? Remember, you just need to put in $375 each month, which is nowhere near $19,500 each year. And the age that you can withdraw from this, from the 401k, is 59 and a half. If you choose to withdraw before then you're going to get penalties, which the IRS refers to as withdrawal penalties. And withdrawal penalties exist for both the traditional and the Roth account. Right, so when you put money into your 401k, it's going to stay there and it's going to be locked there until 59 and a half. There are exceptions to that rule. The biggest exception that we know of right now is during this coronavirus, the US government has actually said that you can withdraw up to $100,000 from your 401k without penalties if you can prove that it's due to the coronavirus that you're facing financial difficulty. Right? So there are ways you can withdraw the money, but it's not always straightforward. You just need to read and do your research on it. Someone asked the question, would you recommend starting an IRA once you have a full-time job, etc., steady income? Great question, and I will answer that in the next slide. And next slide, where we talk about IRAs. But it's a good thing that you know about IRAs. They're very important. When you're no longer with the company that provides the 401k, is it better to withdraw, or so you should just keep your money in the same company? I would say it depends, right? I'm not gonna say a hard yes, hard no here. What it really comes down to is basically, is your new company that you're going to, do they have a better 401k than your previous company, right? It's not always true that there'll be a better 401k just because you moved to a different company, right? You need to make sure that you pay the lowest fees as possible and you have the best investments that you can get. So one of the limitations of a 401k is that the investments that you can pick from are determined by the company and the firm that they work with. Right? So there could be investments that you really want to invest in that are just not available at all. At that point, you may want to consider transitioning to the new company. You also have the option of just converting your 401k to be an IRA, which means you yourself will manage that money. Right? So there's no more fees, there's nothing associated with that. Personally, I like to convert 401ks to the IRAs that I can manage myself, just because I can pick my investments, and usually the fees are lower. But it really depends. You need to talk to a financial advisor or do your own research, right? Figure out what the fees are between the new company and the old company, and what type of investments are available between the two. And you want to make the best choice in terms of that. The only thing that makes the 401k famous is that free money is involved. Right? For those of you who are not aware, an employer can match your contribution, right? It's not always true, but generally employers do match your contribution. So if you put in XYZ amount, they will also, or the company will also put in XYZ amount. So you get free money, basically. I'm going to do some quick math to really go over that. It's very simplified math. Everyone's 401k match may likely be different, will likely have more complex logic surrounding it. So let's use our $50,000 salary again. Your 401k match specified by your company is 100% of the first 3%. What that means is they'll match 3% of your $50,000 salary. Right, so if you get a raise, your 401k match goes up as well. So your yearly contribution to match is $1,500, which is 3% of $50,000. If you divide 1,500 by 12, you get your monthly contribution to match, which is $125. So if you contribute $125 every month, the company is going to give you $125 for free every month. So each month you will get $250. And the total in your 401k at the end of the year is going to be $3,000. 50% of that was you, and 50% of that was the company. Sounds like a great deal to me, right? Free money, you don't want to miss out on that. And for the record, if anyone is confused and when they receive an offer or when they're reading human resource documents and don't understand what the 401k match is, because the terminology can get confusing, it's rarely simple as this. So email HR, reach out to them, ask them about it. If you feel comfortable, you can always reach out to me as well. I've helped my friends and other people read their 401k matches and just sort of explain it, walk them through it, or at least give them some knowledge about it. What's the first 3%? Yes, the terminology always gets us. Basically what it means is the first 3% of your salary. So it's going to be first 3% of $50,000. Right, is what it really comes down to. But you can probably just ignore the first. It's just 3% of $50,000. But they do use that terminology in case you come across it. And It's there because there are situations where it's like, we'll match you 100% of the first 3% and 50% of the next 2%. Confusing? Yes, it can be. That's why it's important to sit down, do the math, and if you need my assistance, email me. I'm happy to read over your 401k with you. Like if you contribute 5%, they will only contribute 3%. Yes, so if you contribute over 3%, they're not going to match that. They'll only match up to 3%. Right? So if you contribute, for example, if you contribute $500 every month, the company's only going to give you $125 every month because they'll only match up to the 3%. Right? You can contribute however much you want, as long as it's below the $19,500 per year. But the company is only going to match you up to a certain point. But I think for the purposes of our model of $1.6 million at the end of 67, putting in $125 is more than enough to get there. All right. Someone asked a question about IRAs before, which stands for individual retirement accounts. The question was basically, someone's got more questions about the 401k match. Let's go back to that. So 3% of 50K is 1,500. Yes, the company will match up until you have 1,500 on your 401k account. The answer is yes, for the most part. There are some nuances here and there when it comes down to it, depending on how you contribute the money. But the most part, they're going to match up to 1,500 each year and not a penny over. So you put in 5K each year, they're going to give you just $1,500 and not more. Great. IRA. Someone asked, I believe the question was, what would you recommend starting an IRA once you have a full-time job? Yes, start an IRA. It's very important. And the biggest difference is that you get to control your own investments. An IRA is another account that the government said, we're going to help you save for retirement. It's very similar to a 401k, and with a few differences here and there. The IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. So similar to a 401k, there are two types. There's the traditional and Roth. Right, so a traditional IRA, similar to before, is you pay taxes later. Roth IRA, you pay taxes now. One of the key differences is that there are withdrawal penalties for traditional IRAs, but for Roth, it depends. Right, there are some cases where you can withdraw from the Roth IRA. One example is you can take up to $10,000 from your Roth IRA if you are using it to pay for your first house. There are other differences. There are other penalties, or exceptions to the penalties that you can read about on the IRS website. Similar to the 401k, there's a maximum, a yearly maximum. It's much lower. It's $6,000, which is much more realistic. And I find that a lot of people try to max out the IRA. You don't need to, but you can. It is an option. And same idea. You can't take out this money without penalties until 59 and a half. Right? So once you put this money in, you leave it there for good reasons too, because you don't want to steal from your future self when it comes to saving money for retirement. The key difference is that, the biggest difference I think for an IRA and a 401k is that an IRA is something that you set up yourself through a brokerage firm, right? So this is similar to a high yield savings account. You just Google, IRA and the brokerage of your choice, and you can set it up right away. Yes, you can have both an IRA and a 401k. Right, so what this means is if you choose to max out both 401k and IRA, you're going to be saving $25,500 each year, right? Which is a lot of money. And if you can't do that, you're basically going to retire a multi-millionaire, like $10 million, I believe, is what it comes down to. But you don't need that much money for retirement. So especially not to reach the $1.7 million. But yes, you can have both at the same time. All right, so here are some of the brokerages and firms that I have accounts with. Vanguard, Charles Schwab, Fidelity. And I would recommend using one of these just because they're large firms, they know what they're doing, and I trust in their services. Here's a few questions. You can only put in $6,000 per year or within 6K per year in regards to the maximum. I'm not sure if I understand the question completely, but you can only put in $6,000 each year, right? So for 2019, I can only put in $6,000 for my 2019 IRA, right? And then for 2020, I can put another $6,000. You can't put more than $6,000. I'm gonna ask the question, is there a buffer? Not sure I understand what you mean by a buffer for the question. As in like how much, when can you put in money again? I would say when the new year rolls over is when you can put in money again. That's the buffer. There are some nuances for when you can put in money for last year's accounts. But once you pass a certain point in the new year, you can't put in money in the previous years. Right? So you can't, for example, I can't put in money into an IRA from 2015. Right? I can only put in money in the 2020 IRA right now. How can I max out my 401k again? Simple answer, make a lot of money. That's what you're gonna max out your 401k. Because your 401k is $19,500 each year. Right? So you can make enough money to put in $19,500 each year and still, live your life, save for your other financial goals, then go for it. Most people cannot do that, and they don't need to do that, right? But it is something that you can consider if you would like to have a very extravagant retirement. So as I mentioned, just Google one of these firms. You could type in Vanguard IRA. Probably be like a 20-minute sign-up process to probably make you go through all the various formalities associated with it, including providing financial information, verifying it's actually you, and so on. If I start with an IRA, I can't switch to a 401k. You can't. You can switch between, you can't move your money between IRA to a 401k. I don't recommend it too much unless you know what you're doing, right? Because they can trigger a tax event depending on how you approach it. And at the end of the year, you can't owe taxes to the US government. So if you're going to do it, make sure you know what you're doing. There's a lot of great resources online. The best one is obviously going to be the IRS website. But you can move money from an IRA to a 401k and vice versa. People who switch jobs tend to move money from a 401k to an IRA and then move that money from an IRA to the new 401k, right? So it can be done, but depending on how you do it, you can owe taxes, right? So it can get complex. Just be sure that you're not going to trigger a tax event. If you don't know if you're going to trigger a tax event, feel free to email me. I'm not going to tell you you should or shouldn't do it. I'm going to point you to the IRS website and the specific line that you need to read and walk you through the logic. But obviously, I'm not your financial advisor, so I can't advise you on that. But I can help you read and find information if you are going to walk down that path. Does age 59 and a half rule apply to everyone? Say, is the age different for a 51-year-old and a 55-year-old? No, it is not. Right now, the 59 and a half applies to everyone for the most part. Can we have your email, please? Yes, my email is going to be at the end of this presentation, but I will leave it here as well. So feel free to email me at any point if you need it. I will have it at the end of this presentation. Mike will be sharing this recording out, and I will be sharing my slides out. As long as you signed up for this presentation or this workshop through Star Search, you should be getting the slides. Can you transfer stock into an IRA account? Yes, you can transfer stock into an IRA account. Depending on how you transfer it, you might also trigger a tax event. So do your research before you do that, depending on how you do it. Brokerages allow you to transfer stocks, assets from account to account. You're never really locked into a single brokerage firm. If you are, probably not a great brokerage firm. And I've transferred money between Schwab and Vanguard and Fidelity, and it's seamless. Just make sure you know what you're doing so you don't end up paying taxes, right? If you didn't intend to. Right? Some people do it and they intend to pay taxes. The one thing I can say is don't sell your stock before you transfer it. Right? That can trigger a tax event. So that's the one thing I can say with absolute certainty. Don't sell your stock before you transfer it. All right. Some quick information and review about what we just did. 401k, IRA. When do you pay taxes? If you have a Roth, you pay taxes now. If you have a traditional account, you pay taxes later. Same for both of them. No real difference here. So let's walk through an example. I find that one of the things that help people the most is when we talk about paychecks, talk about money. And let's say you're putting money into your 401k or IRA, it doesn't really matter here. So you start off a gross paycheck. We're walking through the traditional example. You have $1,000 in the paycheck. You put in money pre-taxed, right? Because traditional accounts get taxed later. So now you put in $100, you have $900 left over, and you get taxed at a 30% tax rate. We're just gonna put 30% because it's easy to read. That comes out to $270, and you end up with $630 that you take home. Right, so this is the money that goes into your bank account. Obviously, the 10% Roth contribution is not relevant because you're doing traditional. Right, so you take home $630. Your $100 that you put into your traditional account will grow over time. Ideally, it will grow to be a lot of money, and when you decide to withdraw it when you're 59 and a half or older, $100 will get taxed at that moment. Right, so it gets taxed later. Now let's walk through the Roth example. Same idea, you have $1,000, there's no pre-tax contribution. You get your full $1,000 get taxed at 30%. That's $300. You end up taking $700 as after-tax income, and then you put in $100 into your Roth, right? And then you take home $600. So you get $30 less, but that $100 you put into your Roth account is going to grow tax-free, so that when you're 59 and a half, you can take out the $100 and all its gains without paying tax, because you already paid it. You only pay tax once here. It's your choice for when you want to pay it. Is it recommendable to have both traditional and Roth? So personally, I have both a traditional and Roth, and the biggest reason for that is just because I don't know what tax looks like 10 years from now. I don't know what tax looks like a year from now, right? It's the idea that there's a tax risk, right? Taxes can be really high in 30 years. I don't know. Or taxes can be really low. So the best way my approach is to have some of my money taxed now and some of my money taxed later. So I have both a traditional and Roth. Personally, I have a traditional 401k and a Roth IRA. The whole point is that you diversify that tax risk, right? Some money gets taxed, some money doesn't. All right, so there is the withdrawal penalty that we spoke about. You know, you get penalties in every case except for the Roth IRA, right? Obviously, there are ways you can withdraw penalty-free, depending on the economic environment, depending on policy changes. But in general, you don't want to take out this money in the first place because you need to save this money for retirement. Right? If you take out money, you're just stealing from yourself. If you find that after you contribute to these accounts, you don't have enough money to live, to really enjoy life, maybe you want to reconsider how much money you put in. You know, maybe reduce it, or really think about what kind of lifestyle you want now versus in retirement. Right? So don't withdraw the money. Reconsider how much money you will put in going forward is a better approach when it comes to this. All right, are there any questions so far about a 401k, IRA, or anything that we've gone over? I really enjoy these scenic slides because it gives me time to drink water. Thank you. I didn't take the photo, but it is sourced and annotated in the slides if you're curious when I send them out later. All right, investing your money. This is one of the biggest and most, I would say, troubling topics because it's always difficult to make the right investment choice. So the question, what if I die before I reach the age of retirement? Where does my 401k go? It depends. On your 401k, so I recommend that everyone has a will, everyone does their whole sort of cleanup process as early as possible. If they do happen to pass away, accident or anything like that, you just want to make sure everything financially is taken care of. But basically, your 401k will go to your beneficiary, right? So everyone who has a 401k, an IRA, or any asset of any sort can really designate who the beneficiary is. So if you don't designate it, I believe it goes to your significant other or whoever you're married to, whoever you're married to at the very moment, or it'll go to the people in your family, right? If you don't specify. So most of the time, if you do pass away, you have a family, the money will go to your family. So still for good cause, and it's still helpful to them to have that money to help them out in any way going forward. So be sure to save anyway. Most of us are not going to pass away before 59 and a half. All right, investing your money, right? We talked a lot about where to put your money, right? There's these special accounts, IRAs, 401ks. Now we need to talk about actually investing that money. Investing is one of the best ways to accumulate wealth, right? When I say investing, I'm mainly talking about, and the focus of this presentation is mainly about the stock market. But other ways you can do it is, you can invest in real estate. You can invest in other businesses. Right? Investing is really a vague term, but in this case, I'm focusing on the stock market. So 401ks and IRAs, people get confused a lot because they believe that the investment, that once you put money into the accounts, they'll just grow automatically. Not true. you need to make a decision to invest, like what to invest in. If you don't make a decision, the money just sits there like it was in a savings account, and it wouldn't grow at the rate that we need it to grow to help you retire. Right? Some people make mistakes where they leave it in there for 10 years and it doesn't do anything. Don't do that. It's not good. You need to be cognizant of the decision that you make, decisions that you make to invest, and how those decisions are made. The third important point here is that guards against inflation. If any of you are aware about inflation, it's the generic rise of services and goods over time, the cost of services and goods over time. Best example I got was when I went to Baruch, the rice on the street, the halal carts, used to cost $5. Now that I stopped by, they cost $6 or $7 now, right? The price of goods and services rise over time. It's not a bad thing, but you need to make your money grow faster than those rising costs. Otherwise, you're not going to have a nice retirement. All right, so investing, for those of you who are in finance or have seen or have invested at any point, the first thing you'll learn is that return and risk have a direct correlation, right? So something that's high risk is higher return. Something that's low risk is low return. If someone tells you that they have a great idea that's low risk and high return, you should run away because that's a scam, right? That's not a real thing. Most of the time, things are high risk, high return, low risk, low return. All right, so on that line, individual stocks are something that's on the high risk side, right? So we know what an individual stock is. Basically, it's a piece of paper, or really not paper anymore these days. It's you own a part of a company, right? Ideally, if the company does well, you make money from that, right? You could own a stock of Apple. You could own a stock of Amazon. Just to list a few. And they're high risk, high return. You don't know where the company is going to go. And sometimes the stocks don't make sense at all. So it's very difficult to pick the right stock just because you don't know how a company will do 40 years from now, which is when you need to retire. Am I positive that Apple's going to be around in 40 years? I'm not. Right? Companies change fast, and large companies have crashed. Just look at all the airline companies. Now that coronavirus hit them, they just got obliterated, and they needed funding from the U.S. government. You make the argument that a lot of them recovered, but what if the U.S. government did not provide funding? We don't know, right? Or what if they decide not to provide funding to the specific airline that you picked, right? But they provided funding to every other airline. That's just like a recipe for regret and disaster. You want to avoid individual stocks when it comes to retirement, right? You can pick your own individual stocks when you invest in Robinhood. You can play with them on your own time. But I think when it comes to retirement, it's very important that you think long term and you think about what the world will look like 40 years from now. The answer is we don't know what it will look like. So you must plan for that. It's interesting because most 401ks do not allow you to pick individual stocks, right? You don't have that option at all. So the companies are aware that usually if you pick an individual stock, it does not come out, it does not look pretty at the end of it because most people lose money on that investment. All right, the next thing we want to talk about is bonds. All right, bonds are basically you are loaning money to another entity. That's how I would phrase it. And that entity will pay back that money over a period of time plus interest. Right, so it's basically they're going to pay you back money with a little bit more. So bonds are generally low risk, low returns. It depends on who you're lending your money to. If you lend your money to the US government, you're 100% going to get your money back. If you lend your money to Tesla, maybe, you don't know if you're going to get your money back. You lend your money to any other company. Those companies can go bankrupt, and they may or may not have a good track record. All bonds have sort of a rating on them to help you determine, are these bonds safe or not safe? Bonds are a great place to park your wealth when it comes when you're close to retirement age, because they generally do not fluctuate over time. Because how much can returning money fluctuate, right? Especially if I'm coming from someone who usually does return money, or a safe entity that returns money on time, all the time. Let's take a look at a graph, right, about bonds and stocks. Right, so I pulled this graph from Yahoo Finance. Basically, it is early 2000s to 2020. And on the top left-hand side, there's two indicators. The legend has two keys. There are bonds, which is in blue, and in yellow is the S&P 500. For context, the S&P 500 is basically a way we can measure how well the stock market is doing. It's a generally well accepted financial tool to figure out is the stock market doing well or terrible today. Right, so if they go up, usually stocks are up. If they go down, usually stocks are down. Right, so we're comparing stocks and bonds. So you'll see here, I highlighted the recession. Not this current recession that we're probably going to enter, but like the one in 2008, the housing recession. And you'll see here that bonds in blue, they're pretty consistent, right? They really do not move at all. But you look at stocks, they just dipped right to the floor, and then they recover a little bit later. And you'll see in the end, the returns for the bonds are 12.49%, and the stocks are 221%. Right, so obviously there's a trade-off. If you're retired, you don't want your money to dip like this. You want it to be safe and stable. How is the stock market hitting all-time highs despite the shape of the economy right now? Is it because companies are taking out loans, which make them look good? You know, you're asking a really excellent question. And I want to say I don't have an answer. And I don't think anyone does have an answer, because the way it is right now is we believe that the stock market does well when the economy is doing well, right? That's not relevant or really true at all, because you have to remember that the stock market is not the economy, right? If a bunch of people lose their jobs, it doesn't necessarily mean the stock market will drop, right? And someone provided the reason because everybody's buying their stock, which leads to high stock prices as one of the reasons. Yeah, I mean, that's possible. It could also be companies are doing stock buybacks. It could be that the wealthy people are buying in now. We don't know, right? And no one does know. The issue is that whoever you're listening to is going to predict both sides, right? Usually when you have the stock market, news stories or your financial expert will prepare statements for if the stock market does well tomorrow and if the stock market does terrible tomorrow. And depending on what happens, they will show that statement. The world is really complex and the US economy is really complex. I don't think that you can really know for sure what's happening. And if anyone does claim to know, it's not something that you should really trust people on. Very few people know how to understand what's happening in the stock market right now. And everyone guesses up and down, someone's going to get it right because they have both reasons prepared. All right, wow, look at that, questions. Yeah, I mean, you have to remember that the stock market is owned by mostly the wealthy and corporate entities, right? It's not owned by everyday people because the information that I'm providing right now isn't readily available to most people, and most people do not have enough money to invest, right? So it's a mixture of there's not enough money going around and people are not financially educated. So most of the stock market is owned by the wealthy, and they dictate usually how it goes. Doesn't always have to be the case, but it is the case right now. Right? So, the idea is if you buy more stocks, the stock will go up. But the stock prices can be manipulated in many ways. It's not always just people buying more stocks. Right? The company can buy back their own stock, which pulls supply out of the pool, which artificially rises the stock price or raises the stock price. It's hard to know for sure what's happening. All right, mutual funds. So I told you not to buy individual stocks when it comes to investing for retirement. One thing that you can buy to hit that 7% average return each year is mutual funds. Our mutual funds basically allow for diversification. Anytime you invest, no matter where you look, someone's going to say you need to diversify. What does that mean? I'm going to tell you what that means. It means that you're investing in a large range of different assets, right? Here, you're investing in hundreds of stocks, right? That's what a mutual fund is. It basically allows you to buy more than one stock at a low cost. And what it translates to is lower risk because it's unlikely that all of these companies will fail at the same time. Great question. What's the difference between a mutual fund and an index fund? A mutual fund is usually created by investment entities, so hedge funds, investment brokerage companies, and usually it's based on a certain sector or a certain theme, right? So there can be a green energy mutual fund. There can be an oil mutual fund, right? An index, on the other hand, an index fund is based off of an index, right? So what that means is the S&P 500 is an index. And in that index, there are 500 companies. So indexes are basically well-established metrics that we use to measure whatever metric we want to measure. There could be an oil index, there could be a green energy index. But usually it's generally a well-accepted index to look at to see how well that sector is doing. And what people do is that they buy all the companies in that sector, which is an index fund. But index fund is a subsector of a mutual fund, right? There are many types of mutual funds. Index funds follow index, and index funds are mutual funds. So there's not really a difference, it's that they're under each other, is a better way to put it. Is it better to be a passive or active investor, or a combo of both? Like an index fund for stable growth and stocks for maybe higher returns. Something very important to note is that when you buy an index fund, chances are you're going to have stocks in your index fund. Unless you buy an index fund or you buy a mutual fund, that's only bonds, right? So you'll have stocks. There'll just be stocks that are winners and stocks that are losers in the mutual fund. Personally, I'm a passive investor. I've done active investing. It's never pretty because you don't know how companies will turn out, and it's hard to sort of like guess, estimate, or do research when it's active investor, because normally your research is always wrong because it's already accounted for in the market. So there's many theories around the stock market and how it works. One of the biggest theories is that if you're reading a research about something, it's already accounted for in the market, right? So how can you possibly know if the stock price is going to go up or down if you're using current research you're looking at? You can't because it's already accounted for in the market, right? So it's like a hopeless search for returns that probably do not exist, and you're just flipping a coin, hoping to get lucky. No different from gambling, really. What if you learn how to read charts? Well, it comes down to it, right? It still comes down to the same idea, right? The charts that you're reading is compiled from information that already exists from data that already exists out there in the world, right? So the chart you're reading is the same chart that someone at Morgan Stanley or Goldman Sachs is reading, right? So they've already accounted for that chart in their investment decisions, right? So you're not a step ahead of anyone. The theory is that you're always going to be a step behind or on the same staircase as everyone else, right? There's no step ahead unless you have insider information, which is considered insider trading, which is illegal, which you can go to jail for. So if you have insider trading, it's illegal. Don't do it. Most of the time, you can't, right? Like Martha Stewart, don't do it. Mutual funds, let's go back to mutual funds. Mutual funds, the fees for, you have to pay fees for mutual funds just because the way it works is that someone had to sit at a desk and pull together all of these stocks and assets to basically say, hey, these are all the stocks in the mutual fund. Here is, we're going to trade it every day to make sure it stays within this composition of stocks. So you have to pay a fee for that work that investors have to do for you. And the fees can range from low to high. Obviously, I recommend low fees. Don't pay high fees. High fees don't make anyone rich. They just keep the rich rich, is how I phrase it. Right? When you're low income, don't have a lot of money, you need low fees. Is there a minimum to buy a mutual fund? Depends. Some have minimums, and some don't. It depends on what you're buying. So some of them have zero minimum, some of them have 3,000 minimums, right? But usually the idea behind it is the more money you have in a mutual fund, you can basically be upgraded to paying lower fees. I know that Vanguard has this model where you pay less fees once you have, I think, $3,000 in a mutual fund. Obviously, it varies and differs from mutual fund to mutual fund. So just be sure to do your research. Would you recommend buying index funds to someone who's very new to investing, or should they stick to bonds first? So bonds are something, bonds are complex in itself as well, but I would say don't buy that many bonds if you're young. You have a lot of roadway to retirement. Because remember, bonds are good for retirement, not so much if you want to grow. If you look at this chart from before, bonds don't grow a lot, right? Bonds just kind of stay near the bottom, right? If you buy an index fund that is tied to the S&P 500, it's going to grow 221% in the same amount of time. The index funds are easy. You just put money into it and you forget about it. And you keep putting money in every year because you want to maximize your gains. Bonds don't grow much. You don't want to make a 12% gain over a 20-year period. Right? That's half your retirement right there. But they're good for when you do retire. So I would say, I would recommend, I would personally buy index funds because they make the most sense for someone who is young, someone who has a lot of roadway and a lot of time for the stock market to grow. All right, so I can talk about what I personally do for investments. And I have, I think, over like 80% or 90% of all my money in something called total market index funds. So total market index funds are a subsector of mutual funds. And they fall into the category. But basically, someone mentioned passively managed. This is a passively managed index fund with low fees. Right? And the biggest difference between other index funds and this one is that it tracks the entire US stock market. Right? So there's roughly 3,000 stocks in the entire US stock market. When I buy index fund, when I buy a total market index fund, I'm buying a share of all 3,000 companies. Right? So if the entire US stock market does well, I win. If it does terrible, I lose. Right? It's very diversified. It's as diversified as you get because you're buying everything. And that what it also means at the end of the day, you're buying 3,000 stocks, right? You're still risky. You know, not all 3,000 stocks will collapse, but it's risky, but in the end, it's also okay. And it's okay because the stock market does well over time, specifically the US stock market. So here are 3 total market index funds that I pulled from Yahoo Finance. There's VT Sachs. If you look at the top left, there's VT Sachs, which is in blue, which is the total market index fund for Vanguard. There's SWTSX, which is the total market index fund for Schwab. And then there's FSKAX, which is the total market index fund for Fidelity. They're all the same. And you can see that they're all the same if you look at the chart. The 3 lines are basically merged together because they all buy the same thing. They buy everything in the US stock market. And I want to point you to the 2 pink squares, which are the 2 recessions that we've had over the past 20 years. And you'll see here basically the early .com bubble and the housing crisis. The stock market dropped a lot. It dropped below 0% and below 25% here. But it rebounds, right? Generally, it's higher than before. And right now, we're at the highest point yet compared to previous recessions. And even for the recession here that we're gonna have or are having, right, whatever source you're looking at right now, due to the coronavirus, we're still going to be up. So generally speaking, over a long enough period of time, the US market as a whole, the stock market, goes up. Is the total market index fund long-term investment? How liquid is it? It's super long-term investment. In terms of how liquid it is, it's still very liquid. It's still sort of a financial asset that you can purchase. So it's not a house, right? You can basically buy it from a brokerage, right? Schwab, Fidelity, Vanguard, and it's similar to a stock, right? You can buy it and sell it the very next day and transfer that money to your bank account. And that entire process will probably be not more than 5 days to a week, right? Just you give a day to sell, you give a day to buy, then you give a day to move the money. Right? So it's very liquid. If you need to liquidate it, you can. I would not recommend it because it's long term for a reason, right? You want to keep the money in the account. The worst thing you can do is pull out money at the very bottom here, right? I know a lot of people who, during this coronavirus downturn, they pull out money at this very point, at the very bottom here, which means they lost money, right? You don't want to do that. So keep your money in the stock market, keep your money in a total market index fund, like I do, for a long enough time, it will grow over time. So I've talked a lot about recessions. We're probably in one right now, and I really want to talk about surviving a recession because we're going to have multiple recessions over our lifetimes. Guaranteed, recessions will happen, whether you like it or not. So one of the biggest things is a recession is basically, it depends who defines it, right? But a recession, when it comes down to it, is the US economy is shrinking. And that's not good for anyone because usually means that people are losing their jobs. Companies are declaring bankruptcy, companies are going down, getting bought out, and so on. So to survive recessions, you really need to prepare an emergency fund. Recessions usually lead to unemployment, and just because you're unemployed does not mean that your rent stops, does not mean that you can stop eating. Right? Having an emergency fund will help you do that, and it will also prevent you from selling your investments. And so do not sell your investments during a recession because recessions mean the stock market is usually down, right? And it's at a low point. If you sell, you're not going to get in when it's going up or doing well. But keep your money in the stock market and be sure to have an emergency fund so you don't need to withdraw money. Because if you do not have an emergency fund and you gotta pay rent and you gotta eat, you're gonna end up selling your investments. Because you gotta eat, right? If you don't live now, you can't save for retirement. The US economy is cyclical. What that means is it does get better. Right? The US economy does generally recover from a recession. You just have to wait it out. Right? And it can be anywhere between a few months to a few years. You don't know. The best thing you can do is just have money prepared. Here's this great graph for unemployment rate. I need to change the year up there. But unemployment rate from 2007 to 2020, basically. And we've all seen this chart. I'm sure all of you have seen it. It's in the news, it's everywhere. But basically, you see here that in 2010, unemployment rate was 10%. Right now, unemployment rate is nearing 15%, right? Just because we shut down the economy for the most part. So we don't know all these things will happen, but we know recession usually does lead to unemployment. So, save money. You may think that you're not going to lose your job. Statistically speaking, you're likely to lose your job during a recession. So be prepared. Here's another chart about the S&P 500, that same index that we talked about that tracks the US stock market. So you'll see here, I've blown up the chart. I've started from the 1960s to today. Right? And you can see that over the long enough time, the numbers go up. Right? It's like a hill, right? Upward. It doesn't really go down. It stay down. So you can see the peaks and valleys. The valleys are basically the recessions. Right? You can basically identify each recession, each mini recession on this chart as you go up. Generally speaking, it goes up over time. So here's some more information about this idea of going up over time, just to really hammer the point home. So the Dow Jones is an index that's been here longer than S&P 500. Some people argue its usefulness, but here I think it demonstrates an interesting point. But basically, the Dow Jones is another index that financial professions consider as a measure for how the US stock market is doing. And you can see here, we're starting at 1900 to 2016. A few key things I want to point out is that it goes up over time. We can see that. We've seen it in all other charts. It's still doing it here. Another thing I want to point out is the red text. Right? People are saying this is the top. This is the bottom. I told you. It's over. We're definitely at the top. This is basically media and professional investors claiming that this is the highest point or this is the lowest point, right? And no one really knows. And this is why everyone says it, right? People keep predicting recession. If you predict a recession every day, you're gonna get it right one day. And that's all you need to do. You need to get it right one day, and all your previous incorrect predictions are practically ignored. but they still exist in history, right? So everyone tries to predict when the recession will occur, when the stock market will go down, when it will go up. We don't know, right? No one can predict it well enough that everyone makes money, right? There's a few key exceptions to it, but for the general public, you can't predict it, right? And people on TV are definitely not predicting it, because if we all listen to the people on TV, we would be doing great now. We are not. The last thing I want to point out is this big scary event in the 1930s. For those of you who are well versed in economic history, that's the Great Depression in the United States. And that hasn't happened since because of all the restrictions we've put in place for banks, for other financial industries, to really prevent a Great Depression from occurring again. So the chances of it happening again are very unlikely. But just be aware that even though that happens, we are still recovered. So some people say, what if the stock market collapses? What if the US stock market just disappears? Then my rebuttal to that is that no matter what you would have invested in, it doesn't matter. You would have lost anyway. So you think about that doomsday scenario. If you are concerned, you shouldn't be buying stocks. You should be stocking up on other necessities, like we are in the coronavirus. Who knows? But it's very important to keep in mind that the stock market does go up over time, and it doesn't really drop in the long term. All right, are there any other questions? All right. Hammering the point home again. Do not try to predict the market. And what I mean by that is try to guess if a company will do well or not over a long term or over a long period of time. If you think company X will do great in a month or a year, that's trying to predict the market, trying to see where it's going. We cannot predict the market. But I know a lot of us like to gamble, right? Play around with stocks, play around with, we think a company will do well in the short term. And if you have to do that, just put a limit on yourself, right? Make sure that you don't put more than 5% of your money in individual stocks. Right? You don't want to go into a casino and take your entire bank account, right? You want to go into a casino and take like $500, right? Make sure that if you go to a casino, you don't set yourself up for failure, because chances are you will fail if you try to pick individual stock. And a case study to prove that point. A hedge fund firm was asked to beat an index fund, right, in terms of returns, right? Basically, make more money than what the index fund would make in the same period of time, which was a 10-year period. And hedge funds are basically financial professionals that have spent years helping wealthy people invest money. Right? These are like the mega rich, 10 million, 100 million plus. They're just helping these people make money. You know, these people have all the tools, the best minds, right? They have all the money, for sure, to beat an index fund. An index fund doesn't do anything. It's just like, here's the index. We're not doing any thinking. We're not doing any smart moves. You know, we're just following the U.S. economy. It goes up, it goes up, it goes down, it goes down. No one's making any decisions, really. So here's the chart. I pulled this from Warren Buffett's shareholder letter. If anyone's familiar with Warren Buffett, he's a famous investor. They made a bet with a hedge fund. And you'll see here that basically from 2008 to 2017, the hedge fund had 5 teams basically working on trying to beat the S&P index fund, which is the graph we saw before, right? It goes up over time. That index fund grew 125%. And every other fund from the hedge fund did not grow that much. Right? It's very important to note that if you are not wealthy and you do not have money, your best bet to become wealthy is an index fund, right? Or what I do is a total market index fund. Uh, if you're already wealthy, you're not really concerned about making a lot of money anymore. You're concerned about not losing a lot of money, which is what the hedge fund has done here, right? They've made sure that their wealthy investors have not lost a lot of money. They don't need more money. They just need to make sure they don't lose money. But that's not our goal here. Our goal is to make as much money as possible with the given time period that we have. All right. Let's say you've invested in the right accounts and invested in the right assets, financial assets. Now it comes down to actually retiring. What can you do? How do you know when you can retire? There's this research from Trinity University, the Trinity study from 1998, which talks about a 4% withdrawal rate. And they answer the question, how much investments do you need over a 30-year period with no additional income? Right? So basically you stop working, how much money do you need over a 30-year period to survive? And they use historical stock market data from 1926 to 1997. And he projected various 30-year periods with various asset mixtures from bonds to stocks and so on. I've linked the study if you want to read more about it. But basically they came to the conclusion that if you withdraw 4% over a 30-year period, you can basically retire successfully and not run out of money. So for example, if you have $1 million, 4% of that is $40,000 a year. So if you need $40,000 a year in retirement each year, you can do that for 30 years without working another day in your life. So some math regarding that is 25 is our multiplier when it comes to 4%. So if you take your yearly expenses in retirement and multiply by 25, you can figure out how much money you need to retire. All right, so earlier I mentioned if you put in $375 a month, you end up with $1.6 million. Maybe your number is not $1.6 million. Maybe it's $1.2 million. Maybe it's $900,000. Whatever it is, you can figure out the number from these calculations and sort of work backwards and figure out how much money you need to put in to save for retirement. Do we have any other questions about any of the topics I just went through? All right, we're nearing the end, but if you take anything away from everything I've spoken about in this long presentation, would be these 3 topics, or these 3 key things. Buy and hold low cost total market index funds is what I do and what I live by. Do not sell your stocks during a recession. The best way you can avoid selling stocks is to have an emergency fund to pay for your expenses. The one that you can do today, right after you sign off this workshop, is to start a high yield savings account to basically save for an emergency. The third thing to do is invest the minimum for a 401k match, whatever that minimum may be. In our scenario, it was 3%. If you don't know what your minimum is, feel free to email me. We can talk it out. I can read your 401k documents, sort of go through it, figure it out from there. And then some in an IRA. A lot of people asked about, a lot of people talked about it. It's something that it's very easy to set up and something that I definitely recommend having. All right, so I talked about a lot of complex things, a lot of things that require you to sort of walk through yourself. I'm actually working on an app, well, not an app, more like a website. This also supports your phone. It also supports mobile phones as well. to help you sort of walk through this process. So here you'll see here's an emergency fund. You put in some numbers. I'll do the math for you to figure out where you are, how much money you need. You can sort of like put in numbers to help you figure out your 401k contribution. What's your minimum? How much you need? There'll be explanations in the question marks. Here. But if you work through everything, you work through all of this, you end up with the financial projections page where you see all the calculations. You can play with the numbers to figure out how much money you need and how much money you have by retirement. And it will tell you if you can retire or not. And at the end of it, we'll give you advice if you can't retire, or if you can retire, we can give you advice on how you can better prepare for retirement. All right, well, that concludes my presentation for the most part. I'll walk you through some of the things I've listed here. So, I run a blog on the side. I'm gonna show you it in a little bit, but I would definitely recommend everyone subscribe to the blog. It's very simple. I just ask for your email and nothing more. If you are curious about using this application that I'm designing and working with, feel free to email me or subscribe. I'm gonna let subscribers try it out. It's still in alpha stage, so there are bugs in the application. So feel free to try it out and let me know if you're interested. You can see previous videos. I've linked the YouTube link here. And next workshops. Usually I post the next workshop here. For now, I just wrote next semester because I need to talk to Baruch and figure out what workshops I have to offer and how we can plan for some next semester. But here's my blog, if you're interested, and all the various posts I have over the years. And if you want to subscribe, there's a button here, click subscribe. And you just have to enter your email and nothing more. If you are interested in using my application, you can. It's live, and I will share the link. If you're interested, you can email me, and I can talk about it. But basically, you put in your age, you put in when you want to retire, your salary, which I just defaulted to these defaults here. Oops, just click next here, and you can put in your budget. I'm not putting anything in here right now, but whatever it may be, you can put it in. 401k and whatnot. But if you're interested in this application, let me know, and I will send it your way to test drive it. And here's a site for old workshops. I have one for credit scores and credit cards. So check out Baruch's website, not website, Baruch's YouTube channel, and you'll see all this other stuff, Star Career Development Center. And if you're curious about workshops that I host at other places, you can also check out my YouTube channel, which is very sparse and bare bones for the most part. Haven't done much on it, but I will post workshops like creating a budget, how I budget, and negotiating your compensation if you're curious about that. Yeah. If anyone has any questions, I will stay on for a little bit. I will be sharing a presentation. I will be sharing a video recording. Well, I won't be sharing it, but Mike will be sharing it. All right, some questions here. How would property investing work? Well, I don't have property, so I can't speak to the expertise, but I do read up on it here and there. Property investing is very tricky. What a lot of people do is that they get enough money to obviously buy property that is not in New York City, because New York City's house prices are insane. They would buy property, down payment, and then get people to rent out that property to pay for the mortgage, right? And eventually they can buy another property and repeat that process. So basically, it's being able to generate more income from rent than money that you need to pay out for the mortgage, is what it really comes down to. There's many tricks too. You can buy a house that's really run down, improve it yourself so you don't have to pay someone to do it, sell it for higher, basically flip the house for a higher profit, or just rent it out. Again, the idea is to generate more income than what you have to pay out through mortgage. But if you are curious about property investing, I would recommend visiting the site, Bigger Pockets. It's a great site. Where is this? Here it is, Bigger Pockets. They have a lot of great forums, a lot of great tools, a lot of great podcasts that talks about property investing and the approach to do it, talks about buying your first house and so on. Very interesting. And would be a great place to start if you're curious about it. How does Social Security work? I know you can start getting it at 62. Yes, Social Security. Luckily for you, I do have a presentation on Social Security. Unluckily for you, this was before Brooke started recording my sessions. So I can talk about it, but if you follow the financial literacy workshops at Brooke, it should come up again. I'm going to ask Mike to bring it up again. But general gist of it is Social Security is income that the government gives you when you effectively stop working or retire, right? And the age that you can get Social Security is after 62. And the way that determines how much money you get from Social Security is based on the taxes you pay over a 35-year period, I believe. And they round it to the highest salary brackets. Right? So basically what I'm trying to say is the more money you make, the more money you'll get in Social Security with a cap. It's a monthly payment you get. If you delay getting Social Security until like 67, you'll get more money. If you get Social Security at 62, you get less money. Right? The idea is that the U.S. government wants you to wait until later because they have to pay you less money because you don't live as long. Right? It's 5 less years if the government has to support you. So you get more money for that. So it's a trade-off. It's very important. Think about Social Security as a very, very important topic that I would love to talk more about. If it's something that you're really curious about, email me. I will send you the presentation that I currently have, or better yet, you can check out my blog post all about Social Security. If you're a fan of numbers, it is, let's see, where is it? Here we go, the uncertainty of Social Security. Right? We basically talk about a whole bunch of things about Social Security, how it's calculated, graphs, all the good stuff, numbers. You'll love it if you're interested in all that. You know, they claim it's only a 4-minute read, so it can't be that bad. I do link to a lot of resources and a lot of sources, so that's some of that might be interesting. Yeah. I will stop sharing now and I won't stop sharing. I'll stop recording now so that everyone can have access to this video recording later. But before everyone goes, I just want to say, I know it's a tough time right now and the economy is recovering and we're hopeful about it. I'm hopeful about it. And I hope that everyone stays safe and healthy during these tough times. I think it's great that everyone's attending this workshop, trying to be financially literate in a world where we don't support financial literacy for people who are from low-income backgrounds, from immigrant backgrounds. It's tough, right? So I'm glad that everyone's taking the first step, coming to these workshops and just learning more. And I hope to see all of you soon, But I will be hanging around for questions here and there. Stop recording now.